हरि ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः. Commanded by whom does the main vital air pran proceed to function? By whose will do men utter speech? What intelligence directs the eye and the ears towards their respective objects? The entire Upanishad is in a conversational style. The student of life, after leaving his span of experiences in the world of sense enjoyments, has come to feel an impatience with the finite joys. He has rejected the world as a field of meaningless strife and the day to day material life as an endless race to catch one's own shadow. He has grown up and has discarded the world of sense objects. He finds in it and through it a glimmer of a glory unknown, imperceptible. Thus, rejecting the false, he starts his inquiry, as it were, upon himself. There he detects the sense organs which interpret for him the outer world and help him to react with men and things, with conditions and circumstances, with time and space. As he thus inquires, he is forced to discover the mind in him, but for which his sense organs cannot contact with the outer sense objects, and without which he cannot live the experiences. In short, he finds out that neither that assembly of limbs and sense organs, the body, nor his mind, nor his intellect can, of their own accord, function without a vitalizing principle behind them all. Although he feels it within him intimately, among his own fellow men, such a discovery is not common, hence his confusion. Critics who took this question of the disciple in its direct and most superficial meaning had come to conclude that the teacher in the Upanishad has failed to answer the simple question raised by the student. Had the question been upon how the mind functions or on the psychological functioning of the sense organs, etc., the student would have approached some authorities on these branches of knowledge. He need not reach the sacred feet of the Rishi. Also, had the question been merely on the biological functions and the psychological mechanism in man, the answer would not come under the scriptural literature. Scriptures of the world discuss the eternal reality in life, the goal of existence, the meaning and purpose of life. It is evident from the very way he had couched his question, by whom willed or directed does the mind light upon its objects, that the student is inquiring for a factor which lies beyond the very structure of the mind and its expressions, and which makes it at all possible for the mind to entertain feelings and to ride on the fleet footed steed of memory, to reach through both time and space, various objects and beings. In themselves, the sense organs and the mind intellect equipments are all made up of matter. Insentient is matter in a living entity. These vehicles are experienced as dynamic and vibrant with enthusiasm. What is this sacred truth? The secret of life, in the mere presence of which matter gathers to itself a joyous radiance of brilliant achievements. How can inert matter itself act? But they are active. And so, what makes it active? To resolve the confusion, the great riddle of life, the disciple approaches his guru, inquiring if there is an independent eternal factor, director who, by his mere wish, prompts the mind to alight on the objects. If there be such a great illuminator and controller, who is he? What is it? What is my relationship with the Supreme Power existing ever so secretively within me, ever vigilant, ever brilliant, and ever alert? It is the function of the Upanishad to point out this realizable truth that there is such a divine spark in us, which is eternal wisdom, the Atman. This divine entity in us is not realized by us because of our preoccupations with our ego. Eliminate the ego in self surrender to the Lord through unbroken Ishwar Smarana, Japa, Kirtana, and by hearing, reflecting, and meditating upon the great statements in the scriptures. May we all come to end our false little I, ego, and come to realize the true big I, ego, Shivoham. Many have done it before, you too shall, is the divine optimistic assertion in the thundering message of Vedanta, the teacher and the taught. The most striking factor that compels one's recognition as one opens the Kenopanishad is the importance of the teacher in Brahma Vidya. The great qualities of a perfect master have been detailed in our previous discussions. He is a true teacher who is at once well versed in the scriptures and also well established in truth. As we read the very first mantra in Kena Upanishad, we see on the stage the settings of an ashram where the master sits on his simple asan, beaming in the joyous ecstasy of true living. A divine God man, peaceful and contented in his own knowledge of the self. To him approaches a healthy boy clad in simple clothes, carrying a bundle of firewood, an external symbol of the boy's internal urge to know, of his readiness to strive and eagerness to become the perfect, the eternal. The Upanishad opens with the subtle and divinely passionate queries on the nature of truth and the means of realizing it. The Guru, in a grave attitude of unemotional, balanced, and extreme love, blesses the boy by a look of grace which beams, as it were, from a point deep within the chambers of the Mahatmas, Premapurna, full of love heart, and which seems to penetrate far into the vaults of the disciples' bosom. Unless the Guru is well versed in the scriptures, he will find it difficult and impossible to direct the gaze of the boy towards the self, which is ever shining within him. If the Guru be very learned, but not one who is living constantly in full awareness of the self, he is again incapacitated to bless the boy with the eternal knowledge. The scholar Pandits of Benares are apt examples of gurus who are Shrotriyas but are not Brahmanishtas. Once this sadhu approached a lordly Pandit in Benares and at the end of the day's lessons asked Panditji, the Shastra is insistent that once the nescience created mind is annihilated, truth is released in its own effulgence. But can really one stop the mind through meditation? The reply of the Panditji was callously open and pointedly sincere. My boy, said he, if you want to know that and really yearn to gain an initiation into the ways of living the Upanishads, leave Banaras and seek a master in the Himalayas. How can we say whether the Shastras are true in practice? We only believe in the Shastra Pramana, but we have not so far tried to sit at a place and try to calm the mind and enjoy even for a moment the promised bliss of the hushed mind, and so cannot answer you or guide you. The same question was put differently and on different occasion to different great saints of the Himalayas. On all occasions, irrespective of the persons and places, every one of them, without a trace of hesitation, beamed out with a charming smile of joyous exclamation and roared, it is true, it is true, it is true. These words weigh heavy with the sincerity of their assertion and sink deep into the vaults of the aspirants' hearts. The reverse is also true. Some of the master men of realization in the Himalayas, noted and recognized for their realization, adored and worshipped for their perfections, prostrated and served for their divinity, are incapacitated to be a guru to a disciple, since they have no medium with which to express their deep and subjective experiences. They stammer forth some broken words of endless import, which as it were fizzle out and evaporate away even before they escape their lips. Or if at all some words fall out, they convey no sense to the eager hearer. Often such masters guide us through their presence, their ways, and their actions, and physically they take to an unbroken vow of silence. Silence, in short, a Brahman, unless he be also a Shrotriya, well versed in the Shastra, cannot be a teacher to all classes of students. To such a complete Guru, a disciple approaches in meek surrender, devotion, and eagerness, ready to sacrifice anything to serve, to purify, and to realize. Thus, in the opening scene, we have also a glimpse of the qualities of a true disciple. This question in the opening mantra is an ample revelation of the psychological and spiritual man in the disciple. He is one who has faced life diligently, lived life intelligently, and has pondered for himself to realize that the value of sensuous life is hollow. He has sought for some more permanent factor to live for. The seeking has brought him to a great dispassion, born of knowledge towards all earthly attachments, and has made him himself, seeking, sink into himself, seeking for a greater and nobler goal. Pramana is authority of Shastras. A strong man who has had previous experience of expeditions alone is fit to attempt scaling of Mount Everest. A man without daring, courage, or an indomitable spirit of adventure cannot be a successful mountaineer. So, too, in scaling the top pinnacles of spiritual perfection, the expedition can be successfully accomplished by one who has the necessary physical, psychological, and intellectual equipments. If one lacks these necessary qualities, he must stick to the lower practices prescribed as the early sadhana for the sadhaka till such time he has removed all the deficiencies in him. Mainly, such deficiencies in our personalities are caused by the world's experiences themselves. The irresponsible, vain-glorious idler becomes responsible, smart, and industrious when his father dies or a bank crash leaves him penniless. So, also, to each of us, measured doses of experiences are dispensed. We have only to take it intelligently and to make the necessary adjustments within. Destiny, when received thus, becomes, instead of a ruthless monster, a loving and sincere surgeon who operates to relieve pain and cure. Bad luck is not like a shackle upon us, but is in fact a tender tie that helps the creeper in us to stand erect. To a seeker after truth, a guru is as absolutely unavoidable as a Shivalinga to a Shiva devotee. To the student of Vedanta, the Guru is the embodiment of his goal. Just as the Bhakta sees no stone but sees his beloved Shiva only in the Linga, a true disciple sees no faults in his Guru. To the Shishya, his Guru is nothing but pure consciousness, absolute bliss, eternal wisdom. Anyone who can elicit such a total feeling of faith and devotion continuously in us is our Guru. You should never expect that a great Guru by his touch would convert you and transform you to God Guru. If you wait for such a dream Guru to come to you, you shall wait in vain. In fact, self redemption must come ultimately from ourselves. The external props, such as temples, idols, gurus, etc., are all encouragements and aids. These external helps must be intelligently used by each to his best advantage, and he should thus build up for himself the necessary inner perfections. With inner purity and perfections, the sadhaka acquires a wealth of purity and comes to be guided more and more by the pure intellect in him. To a Vedantin, the real Guru is the pure intellect within. The purified, deeply aspiring mind is the disciple. This is represented for us in the unforgettable scene in our Bhagavad Gita, where between the two opposing forces in a chariot, the absolute teacher is preaching the Gita to the eternal disciple Arjun. When a pure mind gets aghast at the negativities arrayed against the comparatively smaller forces of positivities, in sheer despair, it surrenders itself completely to the pure intellect, the Lord Krishna within. All such living Arjunas can even today hear the entire divine song in the inner Kurukshetra of their own bosom. Only we must make an earnest attempt and in faith wait for the critical hour when our minds glide into the voiceless state of true Vairagya, the true Arjuna Sthiti. Thus, the most important thing is our own self effort. In sincere sadhana, purify the equipment and the guru necessary for our next stage of growth shall reach us. This is the eternal law. Hour by hour, the world about us is so ordered as to give us the necessary doses of experiences. What is necessary for the next change of growth is always provided by the all witnessing and all merciful Lord. Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa never went out seeking a guru, so too are all the masters of our own times. Sri Tapovan, Sri Totapuri Maharaj had to reach Dakshineshwar of his own accord to instruct the mother's perfect son in the higher realms of meditation. Each one of you is equally sacred and precious to the Lord. When you comes to deserve a master, you shall reach him to guide, to help, and to enlighten. Stick to sadhana, be good, be kind, be sincere, purify the motives, build life upon the enduring values of love and mercy, charity and purity. Through constant remembrance of the Lord, rise in spiritualism. Gurus shall from time to time reach such a determined, sincere seeker. The opening mantra poses a great question: who directs the mind, which, as it were, goes out towards its object? The words goes out, patati, implies the Vedanta theory of perception. According to the Vedantin, the Atma Chaitanya, riding the mind, flows out through the sense organs and reaches the objects, either sound, touch, form, smell, or taste. And the mind takes the form of the object. For example, when we see a pot, the mind runs out through the eye, reaches the spot where the pot is, takes the form of the pot, and when the Chaitanya in the pot thus embraces the Chaitanya spark in the mind, we come to know that it is a pot. And it is according to this theory of perception that the student asks in Kenopanishad, directed by whom does the mind run out? What is the dynamic vital force behind the mind that makes it vibrant with life and activity? Self purification. So far, we have seen the place of the Upanishads in the Vedic literature. There contains the mode of treatment and the necessity of an interpreter or a guru. We have also found the sterling qualities in the makeup of a guru, and we have discussed that ultimately the guru shishya samvad must be within ourselves. However full and elaborate the discussions may be outside, during the gross meeting of the teacher and the taught, they will not help the aspirant to move higher into the subtler realms of truth within himself. The Atman in us has come to dream, as it were, of a dream world. Hence, our feelings of limitations and imperfections. We know subconsciously that our real nature is much more perfect than what we consciously feel now. It is not everyone who comes to feel this call of the perfect from within, which is termed as the restlessness of the soul. This is because to many of us, the subconscious is so dumb that we do not realize its workings at all. When we have got an urge within ourselves to become the perfect, we feel that we should, as it were, expand ourselves in all our capacities. This is itself is a proof that there is in our nature an infinite perfection, waiting for its realization and fulfillment. You may think that it is mere wool gathering of an idle brain or an utopian concept of an ineffectual philosopher when you hear people saying, go to the Guru with a pure intellect and with a true urge for obtaining more of the real knowledge. In fact, man has come to forget his own real nature. We are now living as a separate ego in a suffocating sphere of endless limitations. We have forgotten that we are all, in fact, that unpolluted, undiminished, unmodified supreme reality. Our stripes are all our vain attempts to become what we are. But we are running about aimlessly in our mad delusions after the falls. We do not wait for pause. We do not wait or pause even for a moment in our sobbing. Weeping and sobbing have become our habits. If anybody shows an eternal true path, we dare not even look that way. We have become so habituated to tears and demoralized by our own negativities that we cannot cut ourselves away from our wretched habit of sobbing. We have sadly misunderstood ourselves. If an external thing cannot be seen without light, there should be something within us also. When with closed eyes, we say that we see a pot, a chair, or a pen, the mind takes the form of a Murali Manohara. When you think of him during your meditation, and thus is called the Krishna mental vritti. What would then be the light that illuminates this vritti? Is it not the light of wisdom or intelligence? Mental vritti in itself has no power to tyrannize us or mother us. Only when this dead mental wave is ridden by that wisdom light has it any potency to persecute us. Man can, mind can make a victim of us only when the mental vritti is dynamized by ourselves. It is only we ourselves who enable our minds to play the part of a samsarin. Stop the mind, then there is no world, samsara. Wake yourself up, that is all. And this we can do. That waking up can come only when we have come to the feet of our Guru with a pure heart and a bright intellect, inquiring of Him, where is the inner self? In delving into this truth, a guide is absolutely essential for all but the exceptional few. From the outside, we have to take a right about turn of our gaze and turn it inwards. The Lord is certainly manifest in a bhakta's meditation room at all times. The Lord in the temple of the emperor, in his uh, is the emperor. The Lord in the temple is the emperor in his lace coat, giving his darshan to the populace. Each bhakta gazes at the Lord standing out in his balcony, but no intimate connection between them is ever established there. If you want to have an intimate meeting with the Lord, go to his private chamber. The greatest of yogis have met the Lord in his private apartment. Before you reach the Lord's inner apartment, you should have a certain amount of faith, loyalty, and love for him. To meet the Lord, we have to reach his bed chamber, the hall of pure consciousness. That is the Lord's abode. We can reach this sphere of pure consciousness, which is the bed chamber of Lord Himself. If we reach that chamber, we become one with Him. This jumping in into one's own within, which is his bed chamber, is facilitated by the Guru. When a faithful and well equipped student reaches his threshold and starts discussing upon the Shruti statements, these discussions become fruitful only when a perfect student meets a perfect master, as we have here in Kenopanishad. The mind goes out and seeks the object and takes the shape of the objects. This theory of perception in Vedanta has already been discussed. We see the Ganges flowing to the east, and if a villager is asked why it is so, he would say it is so because it had been so even at the time of my father, grandfather, and great grandfather. But if you were to ask the same question to a modern student of science, he would say that as east happens to be a low lying area, and as liquids find their own level, the river flows eastwards. Thus, you see, things can be better explained in their behavior when we have the true knowledge of them. In order to gain a godly fact or make a profit, you have to live every moment vitally aware of what is happening, not only outside yourself but also within yourself. But unfortunately, the instruments, our mind and intellect, are left to lust, as the great grandfather's razor is left in the wall shelf rusting for generations past, we have been allowing the mind and the intellect, our great instruments of knowing, understanding, feeling, and thinking, to lie in neglect. Let us repair them and make use of them. It is accomplished by sincere and long sadhana. Questions such as those asked by the disciple in Kenopanishad: what projects the mind out? What orders the mind to go to its objects? Will not come to the mind of an individual who has not spent many years of intelligent analytical thinking, unless he has vitally lived the life himself. Such questions will not mean anything to him. Here the seeker has, it is clear, come to a conclusion that the physical eyes cannot see of their own accord. There must be a very subtle power behind the eye instrument that vitalizes it, and that power is so subtle that our gross intellect cannot reach anywhere near it. It is something like the instruments used in miniature carving. The work calls for the finer instincts in man, a delicate touch and intricate movements of the hands, etc. And in addition to these, it needs finer instruments for engraving. Similarly, we need a very pure mind and intellect instruments to delve into the depths of the truth behind the sense organs. Without understanding the total knowledge, we cannot discover our real nature. We are nowadays building up our life with such false values of selfishness and egoism that we fail to earn the real shanti. A total spiritual revolution, so to say, is what is wanted. You can bring real salvation to the world only by going into your own innermost abode and seeking the truth. Self perfection alone can pave the way of world perfection. The world around us in itself is dead matter. We have to vitalize it by our own self perfection. This idea should be inculcated in every educated man's mind. This is the urgent necessity of our times. If we are to escape the damnation we have created for ourselves with our own animalism, let us tune up the noble instrument of mind given to us through a careful policing of our motives and thoughts. Let us, with such a prepared instrument, search out the wealth of light, power, wisdom that is lying in ourselves. In our own redemption lies world redemption. श्रोत्रस्य श्रोत्रं मनसो मनो यत् वाचोह वाचं सौ प्राणस्य प्राणः चक्षुषश्चक्षुरतिमुच्चधीराः प्रेत्यास्मा लोकादमृता भवन्ति. Perceptor, it is the ear of the ear. Preceptor says, Preceptor says, it is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the tongue of the tongue, speech of the speech, and also the life of the life, and the eye of the eye. Having abandoned the sense of self or I-ness in deeds and rising above sense life, the wise become immortal. For a direct question such as, who is the director? The preceptor answers that he is the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, etc. because a direct definition of the infinite and the eternal life principle would be impossible. To defeat, to define God is to defile God. This is an illustration of the suggestive language of the Upanishads. The Brahman cannot be demonstrated positively in a concrete manner, as the thin crescent of moon could not be pointed out. But the branches and the leaves of the tree are indicated here. We know the mind, the eye, and the ear. The rest is suggested. Brahman is the causative force of the things we know. One has to realize the Brahman for himself with the aid of these suggestions, as one has to see the moon for himself. Sincere pursuit. We found earlier that to a question of the disciple, who is that directs and guides the mind and the intellect, the master answered, it is the mind, etc. To such a direct question of the disciple, the master's answer is not so direct, but appears to be couched in evasive terms. Obviously, it is so if it be viewed from a superficial standpoint, but as we go on digesting his replies, we shall discover that there is no evasiveness on the part of the master, but on the other hand, his solicitude towards the disciple is so great that under the circumstances, any other answer given by the master would have certainly caused misunderstanding in the mind of the disciple as regards its purpose. By saying that there is an intelligence of the intellect and an eye of the eye, ear of the ear, etc., it has been indicated beyond doubt that the external organs, the indriyas and the intellect, are not capable of functioning by themselves but are motivated by a power from within. The master has thus not only answered the pupil's question but at the same time has initiated him into a subtler world beyond the grosser world of the mind and the indriyas. The master seems to imply that unless the disciple is ready to renounce his conception of the world outside and the sense of reality in the perception of the gross indriyas and the mind, and is ready to walk with him hand in hand into the Atmaloka, he cannot help the disciple in his search. The world of truth is something not known to us. To us, it is a strange region, a land of dreams. Really speaking, the majority of us here are listening to the Upanishads not because we have the requisite vairagya to proceed on the path indicated by them, but because it is something strange to listen to. Some of you here, while actually gaining only some idea of the Upanishads, may have the intellectual vanity to assume that you have become masters of the same. Such intellectual vanity has been the stuff of many men throughout the ages, and that is probably the reason why the ancient masters have often proclaimed that the road to perfection is long and arduous, and the jnana marga, the path of knowledge of the Upanishads, is not for the many, but only for the chosen few. The Upanishads themselves proclaim that the way to salvation is as difficult as it is to walk over the sharp edge of a razor. Nevertheless, the idea that after all there is a greater purpose in life than mere eating, living, and having a good time should give the average educated persons educated person something to fall back upon, or else in the midst of his pursuits of ambition, greed, and material values, he gets himself buried and destroyed. It is such men, not knowing that they are playing with fire when they revel in a false attempts to end life in cowardly suicide. This divine hope that there is a reality greater than all that he has come across in his workaday experience will give him comfort, solace, encouragement, and hope at severe moments of life's poignant trials. The master indicates by means of his tactful answer that the student must prepare himself and be ready for getting himself initiated into a strange land which remains sealed off from the ordinary viewpoint. It is thus to alert the student and prepare him for the greater adventure of travel to the beyond, for the great discovery of truth, that the master has answered the question which is seemingly no answer at all. The answer is in fact intended to be the key which opens up a new gateway to the mind's eye of the student. It contains in germ form the whole of the latter development of the idea that truth is not that which is heard, seen, or understood by the indriyas and the intellect, but it is in fact the seer or knower himself. All men are endowed with the divine light, even though they may not be aware of it. Truth need not enter into the soul, for it is there already, only it is lying unperceived. It is because we do not know who we are, because we are unaware of the indwelling truth that we have, which is generally termed as human nature, the general feeling and experience of limitations and imperfections. The one truth can be known only by one's own spiritual perception. Others can only awaken the spirit and indicate the path. The experience must forever remain a gift of one's own self effort. In the second part of the stanza, there is a clear indication that the seeker, after departing from the world, attains immortality. Many masters have applied their minds to this point, and from their mature thought and discussion, two crystallized schools of thought have emerged. One proclaims that perfection cannot be achieved so long as we are living in the physical body, and that a great mind can achieve perfection only by shedding the mortal coil. According to this viewpoint, great men such as Vedavyasa and others could have attained perfection by casting off their physical bodies. This viewpoint is a very literal word meaning of the Upanishads. He who has made himself fit by self preparation alone can understand what Upanishads are. The children of the Shruti search the mother and coax the milk of love to flow. They have to nurse and suck at her breast in love and tenderness. Shruti teaches you to walk. She takes you to the inner perception of your intellect first before you can independently come to grasp the subtlest of the subtle. When we analyze both schools of thought without prejudice, we come to the conclusion that the Vedantic standpoint of Sri Shankara is the correct and most acceptable one. Certainly, the other school has also gone into the matter with the profoundest thoroughness, but at the same time, its view appears to be a little colored, a little prejudiced, or distorted. According to this school, karma is to be continued till death, and karma is to be accompanied by lessons in meditation called upasana. And these Upanishads are only mantras to be meditated upon. According to them, the Upanishads are not a particular path of yoga, but are only mantras to be meditated upon. But we find Shankara's explanation to be more logical. He says that the Guru must be well versed in the Shrutis, besides being also well established in truth consciousness. Shankar argues that if what the Shruti says is literally true, we cannot expect to get a perfect master or guru, because as soon as the master becomes perfect, he has to die. For only after death he can have the pure experience of truth. This literal interpretation, according to Shankara, is obviously wrong. That it is not the intention of the Shrutis is supported by the very style of the Shrutis. Then that should be the meaning. Then what should be the meaning which we must understand from the Shrutis? It is that the mastermind delves deeper and deeper into the land beyond, and if he were to reach the subtler world, he must necessarily leave the grosser outer world in order that I may have the consciousness of the homogeneous truth. I must have once forever. I must live once forever, at least for the living being. The mortal world of duality and egoism. Unless I surrender myself completely, I cannot reach the shores of the new realm in a homogeneous mass of joy, the eternal joy. The bliss absolute. Can there be a world sorrowful and pain ridden? We, with our vain intellect and mind, start creating our own pains and sorrows in the world. Thus, we live in the world of false values and false terms, attaching ourselves to things ephemeral and finite, and despair by saying that this is the life destined for us by our Creator. Can we then come to possess the knowledge absolute? How have the saintly men of discrimination, after renouncing everything, acquired the knowledge of the truth? Stop all your attachments to false values in this ever changing world. There is nothing worthwhile for us to desire or for or weep for Joys and sorrows are bound to come in human life. They are just like the two sides of the same coin. Only through the instruments of the gross areas we gain an impression of the gross world. Then comes the feeling that we are a crowd of sorrowful creatures, but we can cognize the life source pointed out by the Shruti Vakya, the mind of the mind, etc. Only after transcending these thoughts in our intellect can we hope to have at least a psychological perfection. It is the value which we put on the world as we cognize it that really matters. But the time the outer world is reflected in us, the reflection seems to be something similar to our looking at the shining bonnet of a car. The reflection of the outer world in us results in our seeing the world as ugly. It is distortion of the real that the imperfect mortals see. To the seer, the world is nothing but that, even while the mirage is actually being seen. Every bit of it is nothing but a desert. Once the desert is recognized, there is no more the ripples or the waves or the bubbles of the mirage. All is now to him the desert only. Vedanta teaches us that one can reach this state of God consciousness if he were to follow these processes, even if it be only an auto suggestion. It is certainly better than maintaining an auto suggestion that I am a samsari. If we persist in living in the misunderstanding of the unreal for the real and the ephemeral for the eternal, it is only to provide and sustain the ego. Go to the world of the self, because that land is the land of the truth. Where can this land of truth be? What is the world beyond the horizon? How do we come to know the world beyond? Let us consider what generally the sources of our knowledge are. Remember, in spiritual life, we are not taken away into a new world, nor is it true that the Guru gives us some new path which we search truth, we reach truth by self effort, striving consistently with our moral faculties. Mortal knowledge. How do we gain knowledge of a thing that is unknown in this ordinary life? For example, how do we know that there is a war in Korea now? The same processes by which we have come to know that there is a Korean war may be applied in knowing that there is a world of perfection. We come to know of the war through the newspapers, through hearing others' opinions about it, talking about it day in and day out, and also through disabled soldiers who have returned from the front. Let us now see what the newspaper reports are. Newspaper reports are a description of incidents and happenings in the field, reported by persons who are quite unknown. Words which repeatedly emphasize this. Om Shri Chinmayananda Gurave Namaha. Hare Om. Kenopanishad, Chapter 1, Mantra 6. यच्चक्षुषा न पश्यति येन चक्षुर्वंशि पश्यति तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते. What cannot be seen by the eye, but by which the eyes are able to see, know that alone as Brahman and not this which people do worship here. The idea expressed in the previous stanza is again repeated here, taking the example of eye perceiving its forms and colors in the outer world of objects. The eyes do not see, the eye is only the instrument of seeing. The seer in the eye must be something different from eye itself, and the conscious principle that works behind the eye is the eternal subject, which is the fundamental truth sought by the Vedantic seeker. यच्छ्रोत्रेण न शृणोति येन श्रोत्रमिदं श्रुतं तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते. What cannot be heard by the ear, but by which the ears are able to hear, know that as Brahman, and not this which people here do worship. The same old idea that behind the finite organs of the body, mind, and intellect there is a conscious principle has been more and more brought home to the student's intellectual appreciation by yet another analogy. Brahman directs the ear towards its object, the sound. A dead man's ear cannot register any of the finite sounds, since the ear in itself is not the hearer. A gramophone in itself can enjoy no music. The rest is all as we have explained before in the earlier stanza. Yat pranena na praniti yena pranah praniyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. Iti prathama khandaha. That which one breathes not with his breath, but by which breath is breathed. Know that to be Brahman and not this which people do worship here. In the last of the series of the examples taken from the body organs by the great rishis, here we have again an explanation of how the matter envelopments in themselves, important and lifeless, generally come to exhibit a semblance of life because of their contact with the spark of life in the person, and which is known in Vedantic philosophy as the Atman. A piece of iron has not got any heat potency of its own, but when the piece of iron comes in contact with fire, it begins glowing as though it were a piece of kindling fire. If a piece of iron happens to be very hot, we know from our experience and knowledge that its heat is derived during its contact with fire. Heat is not the nature of the iron bar. Similarly, life is not the quality of property of the sense organs. The Indriyas can cognize their respective objects only when there is the Chaitanya behind them, vitalizing them. Thus, it is only when the life source in us is connected with the sense organs that they seem to be alive. A piece of wire in its own nature has no capacity to give us any shock, and if a piece of wire does so, it cannot be a mere wire, but it must be in contact with a live circuit. It is not the wire that gave us the shock, it is the current flowing through it. So far, the labor of the Guru was to point out to us the self with reference to or as conditioned by the mind and the intellect. You have read in history the story of the conqueror Alauddin and Padmini. Alauddin wanted to have a glimpse of the divine beauty of Padmini, but she, the true Indian Pativrata, would not allow herself to be openly gazed at by the Muslim conqueror. At last, arrangements were made to give Alauddin a darshan of Padmini as reflected in a mirror. The outcast soldier had to be satisfied by looking at the reflected form and beauty of Padmini. His eyes could not see the real Padmini of flesh and blood. Similarly, we being outcasts in the Atmaloka cannot be seen given a direct darshan of the Padmini in us. The Guru therefore arranges a reflection of her for our gaze, as it were. All descriptions and narrations of the self in the Shrutis can only be a reflected glory of pure existence, the Satchitananda within ourselves. We can be told and we can understand only the self as reflected in the various avenues of knowledge we have got, namely the Indriyas, mind, and intellect. The Guru cannot and will not introduce us face to face with the self, as this is the self. All that he can do is to show us the prabhava of the Atman as evident in the workings of the sense organs and in the functions of the inner instruments. It is something like our conception of the state. The state is not in the king nor in the ministers. It is neither in the standards nor in the people, and yet it is the might enveloping all. In it we function, in it we, the governors and the governed, have their individual rights and duties. Similarly, the self is a might of truth dwelling in us and pervading about us. It is not in any sense organ, and yet all the sense organs exist and function because of the self. The eye and other members, in themselves, though important, inert, and helpless, when they subscribe their selves to the state in us, gain potentialities and become vital citizens. The state in us is the Atman or the Self. Thus, so far we have dealt with, in the first chapter, only the conditioned Atman and not the pure truth, the absolute self. The supreme reality is known as the absolute because of its infinite nature, inexplicable in terms of finite words. We cannot produce the terrible noise of the rolling thunder through the frail melodies of a flute. Similarly, words cannot represent or express fully the roaring silence of pure consciousness. In their attempts at reaching the Absolute, words pant and fall back, as it were. So then, the only way to explain it is to explain the conditioned Atman. That is all that words can do. It is just like explaining the electric current in the wire. Electricity by itself is absolute in the sense that it can be felt and measured, but not perceived by our eyes directly. And yet, the current has many manifestations, such as light in bulbs, heat in stoves, cold in refrigerators, etc. The light in the bulb is not electricity, but its manifestation when it passes through the bulb containing the filament. The conditioned sun would be its reflection, say in a cup of water, and the conditioning would be the water surface. From the conditioned sun, we have some conception of the sun, his glorious nature of light and even heat. But to consider that we have known the sun from a vision of his reflection would be a lie. Thus, Atman being beyond words, the only way we can give an idea of the self through words is through the conditioned Atman. Thus, all that we have so far gained is only a knowledge of the relative reality, the conditioned Atman, and not of the pure self. And there is no other way to words express in words the infinite. As best, it can only be indicated in terms of its expression through the matter vehicles. The seeker has to realize this great truth for himself, by himself, in himself. One may probably come to stop all the inquiries upon and all the independent seeking for this self divine when one has understood intellectually all that has been so far said in this chapter. This intellectual appreciation of the presence of life is not in itself the spiritual unfoldment. Each student must come to apprehend this truth in himself in an intimate subjective experience. To emphasize this silent idea, we have the following chapter. Chapter 2, Mantra 1. यदि मन्यसे सुवेदेति दभ्रमेवापि नूनं त्वं वेत्थ ब्रह्मणो रूपं यदस्य त्वं यदस्य देवेष्वथनुमीमांस्यमेव ते मन्ये विदितम् यदस्य त्वं यदस्य च देवेष्वथनुमीमांस्यमेव ते मन्ये विदितम्. The preceptor here hastens to warn his disciple, if you think I knew well, it is certainly but little. The form of the Brahman you have known is also the form of the Devas. Therefore I think that what thou think is still to be ascertained. The warning is probably because the Guru could see in the face of the disciple a glow of satisfaction and self-confidence and pride at the outstanding. The teacher reads the face and gives timely warning. If you think that you know the Atman well, you are indeed a fool. I have said that the Atman is the eye of the eye, etc. And the same is the Chaitanya in the heavenly forms of the Devas also. But because of these statements in the last chapter, if you conclude that you have realized Atman, you are sadly mistaken. A poor man might mistake that he has seen all that is to be seen by merely gaining an entrance up to the open portico of a palace. By standing at the outer door of the portico, he has seen nothing of the glory of the palace. He has to enter in and walk around and visit the most inner chambers of the palace. Then only he can have a thorough idea of the luxurious magnificence of the palace Prabhava. Likewise, do not run away from with an idea that you have known the self by what has been so far heard. Walk in, roam within, watch, look, observe, and leave the palace atmosphere. Inquire more and more into the conditions, nature, and the layout of that voiceless palace of truth. The Atman gain through the use of intuition and intimate personal experience of that much intellectual comprehension of the conditional truths. Delve deeper, realize the pure existence. What we see, hear, etc., are all conditioned truths. Pure truths lie behind and beyond all names and forms. And at the realization of the pure existence, all names and forms get merged into that. For all that is there beyond the palace of existence is non existent. The coat and the pant hanging on the hangers have limbs and possess their forms and names, but even if it be the royal lace coat, it shall receive no salute ever, even from the ordinary chowkidar, watchman of the palace. Your coat hanging upon the hanger is not embraced by your wife, nor your hanging trousers hugged by your children. Neither the lace coat nor your suit of clothes can excite any emotion so long as they are not vitalized by the wearer. The king puts on the suit and everyone adores, reveres, and respects it. Similarly, the police officer's kit gets no salute as long as it is hanging on a peg, but the moment he wears it, everyone salutes it. So, also, the physical body has its respect only when the Swami, the Atman, is within it. The moment the Swami has walked out, there is no salute to that corpse, no adoration, and no respect. One of you the other day raised a very pertinent question. The question asked, the questioner asked Swamiji, you say that the Atman, as it were, walks out when the body falls down, a prey to rot and decay, a condition called death. But even if the Chaitanya has gone, there is existence for the mass of matter left there in the dead body. Is it then right to accept two different existences? The existence that has walked out and the existence that remains. First of all, let this sadhu register his deep appreciation for the glorious student's independent thinking. It is only a few who can entertain such a doubt. This doubt can easily be solved by an illustration. Yonder is the wall on which sunlight is spread out evenly. I take a mirror and flash on the wall a beam of reflected light. The spot where the reflected light falls is certainly a particularized spot, brighter and more easily distinguishable in the sunlit wall area. We may, by tilting the mirror slightly, change the position of the reflection on the wall, but wherever the reflected beam is, beneath it would always be the light which is spread out generally all over the wall. The beam from the mirror only adds to the intensity at its point of striking on the very surface. Similarly, truth, pure existence, is spread out everywhere, but a reflected pool of light is created, as it were, by the individual's mind intellect equipment, the antakaran, which is the ego in each individual. The particularized entity is no more cognizable in the body of the dead but the general or pervading existence is the uh, bones is cognizable in the body of the dead is the bones, flesh, skin, etc. of the body. They decompose, but the decomposed matter also has the general spread of the absolute existence. Now I answer your question. The coat on the hanger has no personality so long as the wearer is not in it. So long as the Atman is not pervading over any given name and form, it is not a living entity, but dead matter. The house of matter, the body, is sacred only so long as the divine presence is gracing it. Once the Lord, the Atman, has departed, the temple collapses. The difference between man and animal, and the consequent plurality are all caused by the difference in the reflecting surfaces, but the source of light, the Atman, is the same. Only we have some mirrors which are dusty, some clean, some convex, etc. Like the differences between you and your brothers, you and your uncle. In other words, plurality is only in the conditioning and is consequently in the conditioned. Atman, in its reflections, we see differences, but the sun is ever only one. Sun is even only one. Sun is ever only one. Beyond the mind and the intellect, beyond the Indriyas, is the truth, the vitalizer of them all, the source of all their reflected glories. Conditioned Atman alone can be explained, discussed, and grasped by the intellect. The scriptures and the teachers explain only the conditioned Atman. Pure Atman is to be experienced individually by the disciple, all by himself. Often the Master repeats at the end of the discourse that what was discussed was only the conditioned. Remove the conditioning and realize the self. Chinmay was compelled to ask his Guru one day, Swamiji, why not then remove the conditioning and explain the pure Brahman? Why say that it is the eye of the eye, without the eye conditioning? There was no direct reply. The satsang was in full progress. Even Chinmay was slowly forgetting the doubt. As the lesson proceeded, all of a sudden, Sri Gurudev said, Chinmay, get me some water to drink. Surprised at this unusual thirst in such a cold climate as at Gangotri and at such an early hour, the disciple brought a clean lota, a tumbler of water. He placed it in front of the Guru. What is this? Asked the Guru in an assumed air of anger. Swamiji, this is the water you wanted, murmured the overawed disciple. But did I ask you for a lota? Roared the master, or for water? Take the lota away and bring me the water. But Swamiji, how lota without lota, water, how water, lota, murmured the agitated, confused, and confounded disciple. Never mind, said the master in a soft, encouraging tone. Nobody can convey water without a vessel. So too, in conveying the knowledge of the truth, absolute truth cannot be explained in words, just as you cannot bring water without a vessel, so too we cannot express truth except through the medium of someone or the other of its conditionings. Hence, it is that the Shrutis as well as the Gurus explain only the conditioned truth instead of the absolute truth. Any amount of intellectual understanding of the conditioned Brahman will not take us to our goal. The spiritual thirst in man can be satisfied only when he breaks away from the shackles of his limitations and soars higher and higher to his full divine stature of godhood. And this can be accomplished by the sadhaka only through an intimate and intense subjective experience of his own real nature to be the eternal existence knowledge bliss. To gain this intuitive experience, the instruments necessary are the purified mind and intellect. A mind that tosses the least is called a pure mind. The tossings are caused by desires, hatred, lust, passions, and such other negativities in our psychological makeup. The mind, scared as it were by its impressions, vasanas, throws out for us the external world of objects, just as the picture in the film reel gives us the story on the screen. The cinegoer during the show identifies himself completely with the picture and comes to suffer or enjoy the sorrows and joys of the hero and the heroine. Similarly, we have the external world thrown out for us by the play of vasanas in us as objects and circumstances, forming among themselves the world for us, identifying ourselves with this world. We weep and laugh, sob and smile, dance and roll, torn between hope and despair, failure and success, loss and gain. The mortal lives the gruesome pains of a life of limitations. The reality with which we should accept the external world of objects and circumstances is only as true as the reality we claim for the hero in the pictures during our stay in the picture house. But when we are entirely engrossed with the outside world, the Atman Darshan, the vital, intimate, subjective experience of our real self, becomes impossible. We have to remove the vasanas in our mind. Such a pure mind can no more throw any intelligent story on the screen, and so we will not be forgetting ourselves in our preoccupation with it. The only known method of erasing the vasanas is by scraping the mind clean. This is equivalent to holding, say, a piece of sand paper close to the film rolls in the machine room as it winds and rewinds itself, revealing the story to the audience. In time, the scratches on the film strip shall erase much of its distinct charm. Soon we shall see only a blurred vision of filtered light interspersed with patches of darkness. In the mind film, the Vasana pictures can be erased by scraping it with bhakti sadhana, consisting mainly of constant repetition of his names, Nitya, Nirantara, Ishvara Chintana, constantly remembrance of the Lord. is the cleansing agent to be used if man's mind is to be purified of its vasanas. In a clean mind, divinity comes to manifest in all its absolute glory. Thou art, thou art that. Even a rogue or a sinner can attain the final and supreme concentration. Here and now is the promise of Vedanta. Live in constant remembrance of the Lord. Fight down the wrong negative values in your psychological makeup. Lead a pure life of positivity. Serve all, love all, be kind, be pure, be patient, be tolerant, be sincere. Base your life in unrestricted, limitless love. Surrender into Him and thus eliminate all selfishness. Rise to your own divine nature. Serve, love, purify, meditate, and realize the godly nature through constant Narayan Smaran. Pure truth. So then, we have found that fire cannot burn fire, though fire burns other objects that can thrust into it, that are thrust into it. Water can wet all other things, but not water. We cannot say that the water of Ganges is wetting the well water, even though the well be near the Ganges. Similarly, the absolute knowledge cannot know itself because that supreme reality cannot be known by the instrument of its own play. We have been finding that all the descriptions given by the Gurus were the descriptions of the conditioned Atman. A playground is for students and children to play and not for its own play. It cannot play in itself, by itself. The playground is only a field of the children to play on. The field is not playing. Similarly, the supreme knowledge is the field in which these avenues of knowledge come to play, and therefore these avenues of knowledge cannot by themselves independently reach it. So then, when we find the Guru warning, don't go with the idea that you have known the Atman well, and if you think so, you are a fool. We have to carefully inquire into it so that we may understand the conditioned Atman. Then we shall be able to get an idea of the pure eternal self. What you have asked me is only about the conditioned Atman, as your question is what directs the mind to go forth. I have given you the answer too, but I know you much better than you know yourself. I know from the nature of your question that you are asking for something more than the condition Atman, because you are a seeker of moksha, liberation, and the knowledge of the self alone gives us eternal supreme satisfaction. The disciple, in short, had asked for the unconditioned Atman. The Guru explains further to the Shishya and says that the dynamism behind the eye, which makes that instrument see things, is in itself the life center, the center of center, the eternal blissful Atman. A village, a villager visiting for the first time a city, in wonderment would ask, how is this bulb lit? And if his friends are sympathetic, they will not stop merely by explaining that the light is lit when the switch is on, but will explain to him the current and the filament, etc. and thus satisfy him completely. Thus, even though the disciple asked for an explanation of the visible manifestation of the Supreme Reality, understanding the unsaid query behind the question as a desire to know the pure Atman, the life center. The Guru, in kindness, continues to explain. So then he says, if you think that what I have explained till now gives you what you asked for, you are mistaken. I have not explained. The manifestations as light, heat, air, etc., are first explained to the villager, and through them he is introduced to what lies beyond them, that is, the cause of that manifestation, which is the power running through the wire. Similarly, the Guru explains to the student the vitalizer behind the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, etc. And then he says that if you think that this is Atman, you are again mistaken. The Guru indicates that beyond this conditioned Atman, there is the truth which has nothing to do with the conditionings. The conditioning ever keep on changing. The ear, nose, intellect, mind, etc. are indeed necessary for us to provide a proof of the vitality of the life center, just as we must have a vessel in which to convey water. Through the conditionings alone can we have an idea of the life center of life power. First, we understand it with reference to these manifestations, and then we shall reach the goal and experience it without the manifestations. We have got here and the warning that if you think you know well, you know very little, because none of us, not even the masters, can say that Atman is understood.
Jaya Shri Ram, Jaya Raghuram, Janaki Jeevan Sundar Ram, Devaganarchita. Jaya Shri Ram, Jaya Raghuram.